host and friend, Sarah Bramall. Now, over the last few episodes, we've been talking a lot about mentor coaching. You've heard us talking about supervision, you've heard us talking about coaching communities, and now we're talking about credentialing with the International Coaching Federation. But today we've got a little bit of a different twist to our episode because we will be still talking about mentor coaching, but we'll be also diving into some of the incredible people that join that process, learning more about where they're at, where they've started, and where they're going. So today we've got Anne Mulatala. She'll be joining us today, and I'm going to let Anne introduce herself, but I'm also going to say hello to Sarah before we pass over to Anne. So good morning, Sarah.
Hi, Rebecca. Hi, Anne. Great to be here with you today. Really excited for this conversation.
Hi, both of you. It's so nice to see your faces. It's been too long. I feel it's almost like coming back into a room with old friends, which is strange because we've never hung out in person, but I kind of feel like we really know each other. We did spend, specifically with you as well, Rebecca, quite a bit of time together online. So it's a
It
pleasure
does
to be
feel
here.
like that. Yeah, it does
Yeah.
feel like that, Anne. And we almost did have a run-in in London, so hopefully that will happen
Almost.
at some point. Yeah, again in the
Yeah.
future. But it's
Hopefully,
really,
perhaps October.
yeah, really excited to have you here in the studio with us. So please do feel free to introduce yourself to the listeners, and they'll to learn a bit more about you.
Of course. So my name is Anne Virginie, and I often go by Anvi. But as you can see, my last name is really, it doesn't roll off the tongue, particularly in English. So I often go by Anne. I'm currently based in Geneva, Switzerland, but I spent a large part of my career living and working abroad, particularly in the UK. I was in London for 13 years. So I readily identify as British, even though I don't hold the passport. Currently, I am the founder of a social learning studio and a community of practice called Le Trente, which started as a series of salons that I was organizing in my home as a almost as an in-person podcast experience with community and food. One thing led to another. I stepped away from a long career working in luxury fashion. I was at Christian Louboutin, the one with the red soles, for 17 years. I like to say that I started when I was a wee toddler. And in my last role, in particular, I was the global head of communications. So I am often identified with the last corporate job I had. Many people think of me as someone who works in PR and in communication. And it's true that my communication expertise is perhaps the strongest, easiest, most recognizable arc to my bow. So I have now weaved in some of this earlier expertise along with the coaching, along with a lot and a love of storytelling. And I've sort of shaken it all up together and I've created a new concept that's coming to live to you online in October this year. So we're just in the middle of cooking it all up. I hope that feels sufficiently clear and also perhaps a little bit intriguing and mysterious.
Exactly what I was thinking, Anne. As you were speaking, I was like, this sounds very interesting and also a bit intriguing and mysterious. Exactly. So, listeners, I hope that you are hooked and keen to learn more. It's really interesting to hear about your professional background because I do feel that always that informs our past informs who we are, right, in the present, and it's a great way sort of understanding more about you and connecting with you. Very exciting to hear that you are cooking something new that will be shared in October. So I don't want to invite you to kind of, to share more than you feel comfortable to, but I wonder if we could go to the work that you're doing currently and what's important to you about that.
Mm, of course. So at the moment, I concentrate most of my time is split across three parts of the work: business planning, because it's all great to have a new idea, but I think to be able to bring it to fruition, as I'm sure you both agree, it's important to really spend enough time to strategize and make sure that we have a sense of knowing where we're going, even though, of course, it's almost like building a business plan is almost like holding a crystal ball, right? We don't know exactly where it's going to go, but at least it's about developing a clear intention and one that's easy to communicate with others. The second part of my job is actually at the moment coaching and consulting. I do both for most of my clients. So that means that I enter a space where they're aware that I have two hats. And over the course of our conversation, and depending on the objectives of the session, I will switch the hats on and off depending on their needs. For these people, what I tend to do is that I help individuals and companies talk about who they are and what they do in a way that feels resonant for the people they want to communicate with. And so it's really bridging all of the time that I spent at Christian Louboutin, particularly around PR and communications, but bringing this with a side of coaching to help people hone in on their intention, their message, the people they want to touch and target, and continuously making sure that I weave those threads and help them find the answers within themselves. And then the third part, main part of my job at the moment is podcasting. I have found that while there are many ways to communicate and to connect with people, as a business owner, as a writer, as someone who wants to spend time having deep conversations in public, I have fallen out of love with social media a long time ago. I don't mind LinkedIn so much, although the algorithm has a slowness to it that fed me the other day something that happened 6 weeks ago, which I think is a little bit out of touch. But I do love long form essay and podcasts. And so I'm investing more and more of my time in that. And I try to also help create a platform where I help others shine their light. So I really love to make other people's stories come out loud and clear. And that's a deep passion of mine. And it's also part of the, let's say, the marketing suite that supports my work.
My goodness. And you know what? As you were talking, there were so many little pathways that I wanted to go down. So I'm going to take a little bit of a side route, but I will come back to the main purpose.
Oh, I trust the coach. I'm in your hands.
Always. So to congratulate you, because I know before we were speaking, you were saying it's the 5th anniversary of your podcast, so Out of the Clouds, and all the incredible people that you have been interviewing and talking to and having discussions to over that period of time. So do check that out. And then we were also speaking about your love for podcasting and the podcast that's coming out soon, the Meta interview. So do keep an eye out on that one as well. So just wanted to acknowledge that success and now come back onto the main route. What I love is that you've used the word weaving and threads as you were talking. And we often get asked by coaches, like, what do other coaches do in their business? Do they have to just do it in one particular way? And what I love is that you've taken all of the experience that you've accumulated over the years and you've blended it into this like magical mix match of expertise. And you are not just doing it in one way. So I just wanted to share that because people often do listen and they want to know what other people's practices look like. And you've spoken about these metaphorical hats, which is how I describe it, that you're putting on and off depending on the client's needs.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I think that most of us, when we pivot, so for going from being in a corporate job and being identified as Anne from Louboutin and moving on to something different was already a big step. But then I walked through the world as a communications, like a fractional chief communication officer, so to speak. And it feels so easy to move through the world with a sort of a cloak of identity of this is who I am. It's so comfortable to feel like it's easy to explain to people who you are and what you do. And when I pivoted and I started to invest myself into coaching, I'm also a certified mindfulness meditation teacher. I teach weekly loving kindness on Insight Timer. It's one of my passions. When I started to develop all these things and started to write, suddenly it became really difficult to explain who I was. And I think that perhaps the last 7 years have just been almost like taking off the layers of my previous identity and then just learning to try some new things. And you and I were offline talking about the patchwork style that is the East London fashion scene, for example, where I lived for a while. I think that we all have a chance, even in our career, to create the look and feel that we want. It may just not look like anyone else's, right? And it feels a bit uncomfortable at first because you're like, how am I going to all fit it in? Are people going to understand? But I think that it's by trying and doing and following our instinct, which is something that I guess coaching and being coached over the years has really, really helped me really follow my instinct, my joy, learn from, both the obstacles, the procrastination, and the moments of flow, to just trust that I will find the right way that's going to suit me. Does that make sense? I feel like no one coach I know who loves what they do is doing the same thing as anyone else. Everybody's got their own style, their own niche of clients, their own way of expressing themselves, their own choice of marketing and PR, their own side passions. And I find that the clearer we are as to what animates us, the easier it is to then come through on the other side and find the people who believe what we believe and who are then the right clients for our kind of coaching, or in my case, coaching, consulting, and storytelling.
That's so beautiful, Anne. And I'm just loving that use of extended metaphor there about the weaving the threads and taking off that cloak of identity. And that's such an interesting reflection on the coaching process as well, I think, isn't it? That we carry these different identities, and one thing that coaching allows us to do is to explore whether we want to continue to do so, or whether we want to take that off in order to become something else. And I completely resonate with what you said there as well, is that the more that we connect to ourselves and who we really are, the more we will resonate with, with the people that are where we can create really meaningful sort of coaching relationships. But as well as that kind of unraveling and unthreading, what Rebecca and I both see in you as well is that continuous commitment to growth and to development. I guess it's that process again of becoming. So you came to us at the beginning of the year, end of last year, in fact, end of last year, to embark on the adventure, the journey of mentor coaching, working towards honing your coaching skills with a view to ICF accreditation. So I'd love to hear more about what it was that brought you to that particular process.
Yeah, of course. I'm pretty passionate about it, so I'm happy you're asking the question. So let me frame this properly. I came into coaching, I think it's important. I got coached almost by accident, a real synchronicity moment in 2015 while I was on holiday in Thailand in a very holistic resort. And a friend of a friend, I had bumped into her in New York, had just said, "Oh, I've been there." And I had the most amazing coach experience. I mean, that happened less than 5 days before I left. How do you bump into someone in London? And I was not even trying to talk about my holiday. She kept on asking questions. And then she tells me all about this coach. Anyway, so I get there and meet the naturopath. I tell her the story and she says, "Would you like to meet Rajesh?" And I'm like, sure. And I had the most extraordinary experience. Rajesh is a phenomenal coach. He's a transformational coach. He used to be a Buddhist monk, and before that he was a banker. So anyway, he helped me grieve my mother, and it was a difficult and intense process. We only saw each other a couple of times that year, and he coached me for a number of years after that. So I came to coaching from having absolutely no clear perspective on what it meant. I just was the lucky client that got a lot of soothing, huge unblocking, and I walked out in the world thinking, damn, that was amazing. And then not really analyzing it further. Later on, I realized that there's a lot of people who call themselves coaches, but who aren't certified, who may have dodgy credentials, or perhaps that and I don't know much about this, there's a plethora of coaching credentialing systems, and not all are equal in terms of the depth of the work and the development. Like I said, I'm no specialist, I'm not judging anyone, but coming from an exceptional coaching experience, as I pulled the thread further, that metaphor again, by the time I decided to become a certified coach, I had the pleasure of working with Martha Beck and her host of master coaches who are all exceptional. Obviously, I came out of that with really, let's say, high standards that I wanted to hold myself against. And as I think a lot of new coaches find themselves, it's true about a lot of, I assume, new teachers. When I started teaching meditation, I was like, oh, am I even allowed to do this yet? I'm just a fetus of a teacher. I realized that I wanted to be the best that I could be. And then I somehow had got it into my head that it's really important to have a clear ethical path, an ethical stance as a coach, right? That I wanted to make sure that I could show up and say, I am bringing the best of myself and my full abilities in the service of my clients with my boundaries and their boundaries in mind. And it was always in my trajectory, right, to become an accredited coach, because I understood that when you take yourself through the program in order to become an ACC or PCC accredited coach, that this is one of the benefits that you get is not just the mention on your website. It's also that you're saying, I agree, I abide, and I follow rules that mean that there's a clear ethical compass attached to my name. And I know that I want to say 95% of the people, if not 100% of the people who were in my cohort, came for the same thing. It wasn't just to say, I am this, because so that was important. But it was like, I want to learn from other people who can help me make sure that I show up to the best of my ability as a human and as a coach, that I look after myself and look after my clients with as much care and moral respect. And then that obviously helps you become a much better coach, because you pay attention to things that otherwise you don't pay attention to in day-to-day life otherwise. Does that resonate with either of you as to what it was like when you became accredited coaches yourself?
100%. I think there's something special about the people that we attract within the Coaching Catalyst community, and it's because we all share the same viewpoint around ethical practice, around care. And you mentioned care for myself as a human, but also care for my clients, and that standard that we want to uphold. And it's not that we need to do that, because we believe that we need to do that, but we know that there are other people out there that don't share the same viewpoint. But it's we want to do that, as well as it being an unregulated industry at the moment that it is. We have a clear desire that we want to be better, we want to support people, and we want to do that safely and ethically. So yeah, and it 100% resonates with Sarah, myself, with the rest of the community. And it's a great thing that you joined to be part of that. And you also joined to do supervision as well, but we probably won't go to that today, because
and both were great. Absolutely.
We will be here for a good hour. So we'll maybe do another podcast in the future again about supervision. Sure. So what was it about that process, that mentor coaching process, and I'm going to say, that challenged you? Because it is a challenging process. I could easily say what was the part that you loved about it, but I think we've picked up on that already. What was it that challenged you about that process?
Let me think. So I think it's the challenge is quite simple. It's actually to continuously align to the guidelines of the ICF, right? So being able to hold all of the pieces of that puzzle about how to show up and be there, creating a safe environment, partnering with the client, making sure that you bring your full presence, the deep listening, holding all of these pieces together and learning to express them in a way throughout every single coaching session, and being able to almost bring them in very naturally, sometimes more explicitly than others, but in a way making sure that throughout every coaching session we are communicating all of the key points, all of those, let's say, foundational pillars that makes strong, ethical, effective, impactful coaching what it is. And so I think that in my first recording session, I remember that Jay had noted it was more or less all implicit, but sometimes not explicit enough. And sort of learning throughout each of the sessions that we did with each other, and coaching each other and with the group, is I loved seeing how different people are going to express the same thing, right? We each bring our own style. And what I thought was the most difficult towards the end was finding my own questions as the right formulation for some of these ACC markers. I think that when we were practicing together, or when Lizzie was asking us questions and all of that, what I noticed is there were some areas when I found such ease because I already had my system and I already had my questions. And where I didn't, I was bumping up against my own words, you know? And for example, I'm coaching in French at the moment, and I'm finding it very hard because the questions are not rolling off my tongue. And coaching is almost like a new language, I want to say. It's a system of thinking that we can use on ourselves, right, and others, but it's also a new language. So I think the most challenging part of me was learning to bring that fluently in a session.
I love what you've shared there, Anne, because you're really making me think about, the competencies. First of all, it's not that we just kind of achieve them and then our work is done for the rest of our coaching lives. For all of us, regardless of level of experience, there's still a standard to continue to work on, to refine our practice, to refine our competencies. So it's like, as you said, Rebecca, like it's a stretchy process when you step into that learning experience.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that really interests me about the competencies is that it's a globally recognized standard, so shared by many, many coaches, many professional coaches. And yet what you're sharing there is the scope that we have as individual coaches to fit our own style, or to integrate our own style into what's required of us through the competencies. So it's a really rich process, actually, of exploration and discovery. First of all, what are these competencies? What does it look like to align with them? But then secondly, and how do I choose to do that as an individual that feels congruent with my own individual style and approach as a coach?
What it makes me think of is I did 10 years of classical piano when I was a kid. And what it makes me think of is it's like learning to read music and learning to do scales, right? It's almost like it feels boring, or it may feel like it's superfluous, and can't I just improvise or learn this tune that I love? But actually, it's the freedom that you gain from having trained yourself, trained your fingers, and then bring your own feel to every piece, because now you have the competency, right, to learn and to go beyond what you thought was possible, because you've honed into those necessary base skills. And I think I apologize to the ICF in advance. I think that I find your program essential, whether or not one wants to take the credentialing or not, because I think it's the most important thing for me is not to get the sticker on my website, but to hold myself up against those standards. And as you said, to be continuously connecting to my own growth. And I will certainly come back to supervision without a doubt, and to other systems, to make sure that I don't lose sight of what's important. Because one of the beautiful things and the complicated things about being a human is that our attention wanders. And while during the time that we start as a coach, or we want to become certified, accredited, we're going to put a lot of attention there. Over the years, maybe our attention's going to wander off to other areas, and then we're going to forget. So I think it's a process of coming back. That's why I think I aligned with the values of the Coaching Catalyst very much intuitively. I could tell that both of your styles and resonated with me so strongly. I didn't even ask myself twice about, joining your community. But I think it's nice to just remember that we're likely to veer, of course, just because attention is going to take us to the shiniest new important thing. And that in order to remain aligned as coaches, I think we need to always come back to reaccredit, or whatever else we need to do to keep that sense of clarity.
You are spot on there, Anne. It's a question, it's a statement that Sarah and I make often, because, some people say we're going to join because our credentialing is coming to renewal. So we need to do it quickly. We need to do it quickly. We need to do it in the next 3 months. And we're like, but this process, and the reason why I asked you that question about like, what were the challenges, is because I find that the richness comes from the challenges. It's really easy for me to say what went well, and like, what were the great things about the process? But I think the process does stretch us, it does challenge us, and that is what has the longest lasting impact on us as a coaching professional, as a human. So people often come because they want to race the time, or they want to apply for something, and they are great reasons. Like it has its own benefits to doing the credentialing from a business perspective, but also from a developmental perspective. It shouldn't just be when you want to get that stamp on your website or when you want to tick that box. It should be that we're looking at our development over a course of a period of time, and we're spreading it out, and we're mixing up the different approaches, the different developmental approaches, like supervision, like mentor coaching, CPD, all the other things that we can do. So you're spot on there. And it's a value that Sarah and I really do share. So we try to communicate that. So now we've got Anne, who's also waving the flag that it's not.
To be fair, I can tell you very clearly, I became a much better coach thanks to that program, because it challenged me, Lizzie, every time we looked after one core competency and we unpacked it for an hour and a half, which is a generous amount of time to really sort of go over what it means and how we work with it, how it's difficult to work with it, etc., etc. And that means that throughout that time, it just kept me reflecting. And I almost think it's the kind of work, because there's a lot of questions being asked, that keeps on dripping in the back of our minds, right? Like there's a drip of, oh yeah, what was it you said again? What am I supposed to show up as? What's deep presence about? What am I doing for the client? So I would benefit from doing it again. I just think it's really one of those, I'm a bit of an idealist, but I think it's one of those things that creates just such strong foundations that we can use beyond coaching as well. Right? Oops, sorry, there's a little fly. I think it can go beyond coaching and perhaps into the rest of our working lives and perhaps even our relationships. I think there's a lot of the things that I focused on, even though right now I couldn't name all of the competencies to you. But I feel like this is work that I hope that I'll continue doing over and over again.
I love that, Anne. We say who we are is how we coach, but actually how we coach is also who we are. So all of those skills that we learn in coaching in terms of working on our presence, thinking about the questions that we ask, demonstrating empathy, seeking to understand all of those principles that really underline what coaching is. It's not just something that we do as our kind of job, is it? It's something that is absolutely, I think I would say that without exception, actually, for all good coaches, it's who we are as a person, because it naturally seeps into the rest of our identities, all of our relationships, all of our interactions that we have. So the benefits actually are widespread. It's about improving our sort of technical competence as a coach, but it goes far, far kind of wider than that in terms of benefits.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm noticing that we're very quickly heading towards the end of our time together today. Rebecca and I always really love talking to you. It's always a really interesting and rich conversation. So, for our listeners listening to you thinking, I'd love to learn more about Anne, where can I find Anne? Where would be the best place to direct our listeners to, Anne, so that they can learn more from you, so that they can connect with you?
There's a couple of places that they can find me. You can find me first on my website, which is annevmulatalo.com. You'll see there's a plethora of links to tell you a bit about all of the wonderful things that I'm doing at the moment. So whether it's writing, coaching, podcasting, hosting events, loving kindness, meditation, mindfulness, leadership, blah, 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 blah. It's all on there. If you're interested in finding out about Le Trente and you're particularly keen on getting support as to talking about who you are and what you do, which is, like I said, the core of my current identity, then you can head over to letrente.com. And yes, look up the MetaView. You can subscribe to my newsletter, and you'll get regular news updates, some long form essays with audio, and links to many projects and the upcoming community launch.
Thank you, Anne. We will definitely be keeping an eye out on the new podcast, and definitely catching up on some of the episodes from the existing podcast too. So we love to sum up our conversation here at the Coaching Catalyst podcast with 2 words that sums up what we've spoken about. So I will take the lead, because normally I'm like, Sarah, over to you. So she's like, I know you, Rebecca. So I will go for the lead today. I'll go for myself, I'll go to Sarah, and then I'll go to you, Anne, for 2 words to sum up the conversation. So my 2 words are, and I always cheat here, Anne, but I'm going to go for golden threads, because that seemed to come up a lot, and I'm really just seeing that as the richness in the work that you do. And I will see that will continue to happen with you. And I will also go with stretchy, because I do think the developmental process is and can be stretchy, but I also do think that is the richness of it. So golden threads and stretchiness. Over to you, Sarah. What's your 2 words?
Thanks, Rebecca. I always love this challenge. Mine was the cloak. I think what you mentioned earlier, Anne, about taking off that cloak to discover who we are, really resonated with me, as did another metaphor you used about the concert pianist. So my words are cloak and piano. You give me lots of food for thought taking away from this conversation. What about you?
I don't know. Your words are so good. Hold it. Because I was, getting the questions, I didn't, think about that.
That's okay. This is always me,
It's
Anne.
not a word. So there's a friend of mine. She's also a coach in the US, and it's funny because I've recently interviewed her, and she kept on doing this in front of me to talk about something, and I did the same thing today. And so it's not. There's a word, but there's a movement as well. It's aligned, right? That finding that center and always realigning. And it's really funny that I was emulating her in this conversation.
I love that, Anne. And for our listeners, I'm just going to paint that picture a little bit more. Anne, as she's speaking here, is drawing like a vertical line down from the top of her head down to her chest to speak about that process of aligning, which is, absolutely. And a work in progress, right? That alignment is
it's always about coming back, right? We forget, we come back, we realign.
Well, what a conversation. So listeners, we'd love to hear from you. Like, what are your words that you're taking away from our conversation today? We will share Anne's links in the show notes, so do go and check those out as well. And if you are listening to this episode close to its time of sort of release, you will be aware that we have our mentor coaching for ICF accreditation starting in September. So if that's something that you're interested in, do click on the link in the show notes, drop us a message, let us know that you're interested. If you're listening to it kind of further in the future, know that we will be running the program again. So either way, if ICF accreditation is on your radar, make sure that you get in touch. But Anne, thank you so much for your time, for all that you've shared with us today. It's been a great conversation. Thank you.
You're
Thank
so
you,
welcome.
Anne.
It's such a pleasure to see you both. I hope we'll see each other again soon.
Most definitely.
Take care.